thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm slightly nervous, to be honest. So I've had such a lovely welcome this morning, meeting people. So I thought I might start with just telling you a bit about myself. So my name's Mary Mitchell. I am Australian. You could probably tell from my accent. I grew up in a country town called Cooma in New South Wales in Australia. And I moved out to the UK in 1993, which feels like quite a long time ago now, when I was 27. And I was a youth worker in Edinburgh for about 9 years in a housing estate in Edinburgh, and loved that work, and then decided I wanted to qualify as a social worker, and so qualified at Edinburgh Uni doing a master's in social work, and then went back to North Edinburgh and was a group worker with families for a number of years, and kind of worked around Edinburgh as a kind of community-based social work, I would say, probably more than statutory social work, child protection work. So in about 2012, I decided I kind of wanted to do something different, and was really lucky actually to get a scholarship to do a PhD with a charitable organisation called Children First. It's a collaborative PhD, and Children First is a national children's charity in Scotland. So what they were wanting to look at was really about outcomes for children who are at risk of being accommodated, who were involved in family group conferencing, which kind of leads me to why I'm here today. So my PhD, I looked at kind of what those outcomes were. What does family group conferencing, how does it support children and families and professionals? And really, that's kind of what I'm here to talk to you about around recognition, because part of what happened with my speaking to people is the idea of support, being loved, cared for, really emerged from what people were saying, what children were saying about family group conferencing, and what parents were saying, and indeed what professionals were saying. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to spend 10, 15 minutes talking about this morning. It kind of emerged from it, but I also, when I started to kind of Google support and caring and being listened to, the word that came up was recognition. So from there, I kind of delved into the idea of recognition. There was a theory, funnily enough, about recognition, which was kind of suggested by a German philosopher, Honor. So I'm going to talk a lot of what he has written about it, and then a bit of what I've learnt from family group conferencing around recognition and love. So what do I mean by recognition? So I suspect that everybody in this room has had some sense of feeling recognised or not recognised on a day-to-day basis. So I was having a walk with a mate the other day talking about doing this, and she said, well, the thing that I felt was that I was just in the system of health, I was not recognised. I felt completely ignored by the system when I was giving birth. She just had a really traumatic time, which was the complete contrast to what I had. So for me, I had good relationships with my midwife and the nurses around me. My partner was there. There were various points they had a birth plan that the midwife was following. The kind of way in which people talked to me, the room itself, the lighting, the smell in the room, the kind of all the things around what was happening, this space kind of made me feel confident that as a person giving birth at this most vulnerable point in my life, that actually I was going to be okay, and that if something went wrong, the people around me were going to hold me in a safe space. Very unlike my mate, who just, her experience, as I say, was when she still feels really traumatised by the experience. She didn't feel in control. She didn't make decisions and then be followed through. So there was a whole complete contrast of the same process for people. So in family group conferencing, it could be the same for lots of different people, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how recognition, how it kind of manifested, how people talked about being recognised when I spoke to them about family group conferencing. So there's kind of some core principles underpinning recognition, and I suppose it's not rocket science, and a lot of us will know about it. One is basically that we are human beings and we like to interact. So we are social beings and we connect with people. So we interact with each other socially, and that can influence how we can feel about ourselves, our identity, and who we are as people. It validates who we are. So my being talking to you in a way that's respectful and supportive means that you will feel like you're a human being and a whole person and being recognized. The second kind of underlying principle of recognition is really for self-identity to flourish, there needs to be some reciprocity. And what I mean by reciprocity is that two people are talking to one another, and that actually means that they are listening to one another, respecting one another, and there is a two-way process about that. So it's not just me talking to you and giving you all of this. It's actually a two-way process of you talking as well and communicating. People nodding is kind of a sense of their recognition of what I'm saying, or them smiling is kind of we're having a kind of interaction, even if I'm standing in the front of the room talking. So self-identity is really important in the kind of sense of reciprocity, and that we are equals coming together to have a relationship together. And the third principle of recognition is really about it needs effective dialogue and communication, funnily enough. So one of the things about that is what they say in the writing about recognition and this element of communication and good communication is it's also about communication with yourself. So what's your self-talk is as important as the talk that you get from others, because we take on what other people tell us about ourselves. So it starts to manifest in how we behave, who we are. Our sense of self-respect, self-esteem and self-confidence is impacted by these kind of elements of recognition. So that's the three principles underlying recognition. And what Honneth, the German philosopher, talks about is there's three forms of recognition, which I think kind of interact when you're in a social work situation or within family group conferencing. And those forms are love, which is very appropriate today because we're on Valentine's Day. So love, respect, and solidarity are the kind of three areas of recognition that I think kind of resonates around family group conferencing. So when I talk about love, I'm talking about that we are all in these interdependent relationships with people who we care about as human beings. So they will be people who you're in your family. So I've spoken this morning about people who you can clearly see people loving one another in the sense of them talking about their family members, that they give support to them, that they receive support from the other people in their family, and that's what that does is give people a secure base and a sense of, I'm all right in the world, I'm loved. Whatever happens, somebody's got my back. So that's the sense of love, and it can be around your intimate relationships in family, lovers, friends, and broader network and social groups that you belong to. But the second area is about respect, and I've talked about love as a form of respect as being a form of recognition, rather. And so respect is, I'm talking about that reciprocity. We're coming together as human beings with a sense of equality. So I'm speaking to you as a person standing here slightly nervous, and you're giving me a lot of feedback that that's okay. So there's a sense of equality in what's going on. I'm not here trying to feel like the expert. I've got something I've learned about that I'd like to share, and I hope that you'll receive that with good humour and a critical view, really. So that's a kind of level of respect. And I think the thing that happens in FGC that I noticed was that people talked about being listened to all the time. So the kind of process of unpacking in a family meeting, I talked to my mum about various things that she never listened to me before at. So I felt listened. I could tell her what was going on, and then her mum could actually speak to her. So there was kind of lots of things of the stage process of family group conferencing which allows people to learn to respect and listen to each other, which is actually a really powerful process of recognition that happens in FGCs. So there's a kind of sense of the love that's felt in a room. People know that they're being supported and cared for, and then there's a respect that may not have been present previously. People are learning those skills, trying out new ways of talking to one another and being listened to. So people who I spoke to talked a lot about feeling listened to made them feel good as a person, as a human being. And the third element of recognition is around solidarity. And solidarity, when I talk about solidarity, I'm kind of talking about the value of that person and their strengths and what they can contribute to their family, to their social group, to their community. And I suppose in family group conferencing, an element of solidarity is kind of, you think about people getting together in a social network who's building a plan for an individual, for a child who needs some support, or for an adult who might need additional support and some care around them. And the idea of the plan is really, in a solidarity sense, is thinking, we recognise you can't do it alone, we can't do it alone, let's work together to build something here that's going to support you. So in lots of ways, it really fitted with family group conferencing and also with social work practice, I think, or it can work with social work practice. Now, as was said earlier, it's not a panacea to everything, family group conferencing, and certainly there are many family members I spoke to who found it really difficult and they didn't necessarily feel recognised within the process, and it wasn't a particularly helpful process for them. But when done in a way that a recognition actually was supported, actually it was quite an incredibly self-affirming, built people's self-esteem, their confidence in being able to ask for support, and a sense of self-respect for themselves. And that worked for professionals as well. Professionals began to feel that they were recognised, that they could be seen, they could share their concerns for families in a way that wasn't going to be ignored, and families could share their concerns with professionals that wasn't going to be ignored as well. So it's kind of was very much a part of what I saw happening in family group conferencing. So the other part of this, if I think that's really important, is if recognition doesn't happen, they talk about something called misrecognition. And I think one of the things around that is it can be very debilitating for people. It can cause harm not to be recognised as an individual or as part of a social group. So it can cause a level of anger, of shame, of frustration, and can be very traumatic for people. And I think that's quite important for us to hold on to, both for ourselves being recognised as the people who we are, but also in the way that and the manner in which we might relate and build relationships with other people that we're working with. So that's me. I'm going to just leave a note. See, I didn't even use these notes. It's just I've kind of wanted as a hold all to make sure I've got everything ready. But I just wanted to conclude with this. I'm going to read this because I think that for me it kind of feels like there's something, and I hope will allow some discussion for the rest of the day. So, I believe being recognised is part of an empowering process. Recognition helps affirm our self-identities. Recognition can support and improve inter-family relationships through care, respect, and solidarity, through those interactions of those forms of recognition. An improved understanding of recognition in practice for us social workers can help us understand how being seen or not seen can affect people needing support from services in adult services and children's services. And in recognising those people, we can help build relationships as professionals with families and different people within different family constellations, the way that they're made. So I would say that embedding empowering practice and a recognition through love, respect and solidarity in the relationships we have with each other can build trust and partnership working between family members and between family members and professionals, which is kind of what I think family group conferencing is all about in lots of ways. There's a really lovely quote I'm going to finish on by a guy called Richard Sennett, who's written quite a lot about inequality and respect. And he says, treating others with respect doesn't just happen. Even with the best will in the world, to convey respect means finding the words and gestures which make it felt and convincing. So, thank you very much. I hope that helps in the conversations today.